On May 18th, Stanford immunologist Garry Nolan was a guest at Salt Eye Connections New York 2023, where he dropped some UFO bombshells that you're not going to want to miss. UFO researcher J. Christopher King had this to say about this event. Stop what you're doing. When you have a free moment, watch this, and then do about 5 minutes of research to understand the audience at Garry P. Nolan is talking to here in New York. From the website, New York's largest CAP intro event, Salt Eye Connections New York, is taking place May 16th to 18th at the Glass House, 660 12th Avenue, for 2 days of collaboration focused on disruptive innovation in finance, economics, and geopolitics. This year's conference will be a return to its alternative investment roots and will feature speakers ranging from leading sovereign wealth funds, North American institutional allocators, and fund of funds. And then here is the apparent pricing according to the website. Stage 1, $15K. Stage 2, $17,500K. And Stage 3, $20K. Here's a quick exchange with Dr. Garry Nolan that happened after the event on Twitter. Hashtag UFO Twitter, at Garry P. Nolan. Holy moly, Gary. You've gone all in, mate. Total respect. Garry Nolan responds, go big or go home, as a good friend likes to say. You don't move the ball by standing around deciding if the goal is too far away. Please do note, though, that I was asked my opinion. John responds, most importantly, were there any alternative investors or innovation experts at SALT that wanted to know more about UAP? Garry responds, yes, and offered to help. Considering the pedigree of those that attended this event, that's not a trivial thing by any stretch of the imagination. Let's dive right into the event, and I'll offer some commentary.
Today we're going to talk about aliens.
I don't think Garry Nolan would have been invited to an event like this to literally focus on the discussion of aliens visiting our planet prior to December 16th, 2017, when the New York Times article dropped and we learned about a secretive UFO program, as well as Navy pilots encountering UAPs in highly restricted airspace. So this is really, this event, having Garry Nolan presenting what he did, is really a sign of the times.
I'm curious, do you believe that extraterrestrial intelligence has visited planet Earth?
I think you can go a step further. It hasn't just visited, it's been here a long time, and it's still here. And it has basically, people talk about the wow signal, looking for extraterrestrial intelligence. The wow signal is that people see it on an almost regular basis. That's the communication that's already here.
On May 18th, the same day that this interview dropped, I wrote on Twitter, a pre-disclosure world within UAP context is mostly about unknown craft. A post-disclosure world is mostly about the non-human intelligences behind the craft and abductions. That's just how it works. Now, Garry Nolan said that the wow signal can be likened to the amount of witnesses that come forward all the time that claim they've seen UAP. He didn't specify the abduction phenomenon, but I'm going to. I do think the abduction phenomenon is likely real. And we haven't yet moved beyond the threshold of a pre-disclosure world into a post-disclosure world. But I assess that when that day comes, and I do believe it will come, we're no longer going to fixate on the technology as much, like, oh, sighting here, sighting there, going into restricted military airspace with impunity all over the world, sightings all over the world, and we're going to start focusing more on the actual intelligences that are obviously in control of these technologies, and stories of people getting abducted and having close encounters and unambiguous sightings. And we'll be asking the bigger questions. Is it one civilization? Is it multiple civilizations? What are they doing here? Why are they abducting people? How long have they been here? What's their agenda? That's going to be the bulk of the conversation in a post-disclosure world.
The creation of a whistleblowers program specifically that allows people from within, I'm going to say this, who've been working on the reverse engineering programs, reverse engineering of objects, so that they can come in and break their oaths, but it's specifically just to talk to Congress and give that information in classified settings. And that the most recent one that happened was just last weekend, and it created quite a hornet's nest in Washington.
So according to Dr. Garry Nolan, just last weekend, the United States Congress, obviously I'm not referring to all of them, but I guess the committees that are relevant to this topic were informed by whistleblowers about a back engineering UFO program that has UAP of unknown origin, not from mankind, being studied to try to duplicate the technology for military means. And he said that this happened last weekend, and then he said that it created a quote-unquote hornet's nest. So Congress is getting informed about programs via whistleblowers, and they're obviously taking it very seriously. And because it's real, I don't think this is a bunch of LARPers that are just coming forward to Congress who work for potentially aerospace contractors, and they're going to throw their career away potentially because they're LARPers and they just want to pretend, and they just want to say, hey man, I saw this and I'm involved in this, and they're not really sure. And these are people with high level clearances? Nah, I don't think so. I don't think so. And interestingly, it was recent that investigative filmmaker James Fox was on Breaking Point's YouTube channel, and he stated that Luis Elizondo told him that the case from 1996 in Varginha, Brazil was real, that a UAP actually did crash in 1996 in Varginha, Brazil. So if that's true, and if you've watched the movie, it doesn't look that far-fetched. It makes you wonder how many non-human technologies have crashed on this planet that have been recovered and that are stored somewhere within the United States and are being looked at.
Yeah, and I'm curious, do you have confidence that us collectively will have material, literal physical material to evaluate, to analyze?
Yes, 100%.
100% again, okay.
It's there. It's there. I can say this. I was working with a group about 7-8 years ago, and I literally got within a few weeks of gaining access to one of the objects. And when the people who didn't want us to gain access to it found out about it, they pulled some bureaucratic administrative tricks and snatched it away.
So I think at the very least, that is 100% new information. I've never heard this before, but Dr. Garry Nolan said himself that 7 or 8 years ago, he was about to get access to an object. I think he's referencing a recovered craft that allegedly exist and are being looked at by aerospace companies. But then in the last minute, that capacity to get access was taken away by some bureaucratic intervention. So that's really interesting, and I don't think we've known that before. And I hope that at some point Garry Nolan can get access to this kind of material to look at further, because he's one of our brightest minds. And I think he'd be a great candidate to see what he can discern about these mysterious technologies.
If you had to assign a probability to that statement, that you believe extraterrestrial intelligence has visited this planet, what probability would you assign?
100%. And that's not just my opinion. I mean, look, the National Defense Appropriation Act, passed last year, signed by Biden in December. 30 pages of that is the establishment of an unidentified aerial phenomenon office, the establishment of looking into the harm that's happened to any of a number of the individuals, going back to 1945 and looking at the disinformation and misinformation that has been basically articulated over the decades. 12 US senators have signed on to a document that basically says we want the information. The establishment of an office, ARROW, in the Department of Defense has 25 people working in it right now. And what's their goal? Collecting the information across all of the U.S. Department of Defense intelligence offices, and collation of that into a uniform format for the very first time, and provision of that then to Congress.
Now, Dr. Garry Nolan puts 100% probability that we are being engaged by non-human intelligence. Generally, I would not go that far. I've stated before that I have cognitive dissonance on this topic, but I'm not a black and white thinker. And unfortunately, there's a lot of black and white thinking from my perspective within this conversation. And from skeptics are very black and white. If you're on Twitter, a lot of times they'll be like, well, there's no evidence. Well, no, there is evidence. There's no proof. Or they'll say, well, show me the dead alien body. Otherwise, I don't want to hear about it. Even though they're like on Twitter all day trying to, criticize people in this community. At least that's my perception of some of these people. But the sad thing is, at least to my subjective perspective, is that what's going to ultimately happen, because I do think we're going to get disclosure. This is going to continue to escalate. It's not going to implode. It's not going to go into a reversal. And then eventually we'll get admissions that are not wishy-washy, not vague, from maybe a congressional committee or something of that gravity. And then at some point we'll get sensor data that has not been shared before, so that it'll be a combination of a high-level admission and then the sensor data to help us to accept our place in the universe. And then those people that always said, like, well, there's no evidence. Just show me the evidence. Show me the dead alien body. We've been here and done this before. We've been to this rodeo before. Suddenly they're going to wake up and say, oh my God, disclosure. And from my perspective, I'm going to be like, what? You missed it. No. You missed disclosure. You didn't actually witness it. You witnessed the last moment of disclosure. But that's sad, because the whole time you were mocking this process, you were laughing at this process. You were ridiculing this process. You were smug. You thought you were smarter than everybody. You believed that no one could be trusted. No one knew what they're talking about. They're LARPing. They're delusional. They're misidentifying. The whole time you did that for years and years, from December 16th, 2017 to whenever we get disclosure, you missed the ride, son. This was amazing. It was so profoundly historical, every little piece of it. But in your pride, and in my opinion, your poor analytical skills, you spent this whole swath of time, potentially the most historical stretch of time in human history, laughing and ridiculing it. And then when we finally get to the quote unquote, I know some people are gonna criticize for me, because there's people out there who like to compare belief in UFOs with religion, but let's just give them what they want. Know what I'm saying? You missed everything until we got to the promised land. Not me. This is like a diary, son. This YouTube channel is like a diary, man. I get on here and I tell the world about what's going on, how amazing this all is, and my response to it. And people have seen how my perception of this topic has evolved over time. I'm more skeptical. I even have cognitive dissonance. But on the other hand, as this continues and it doesn't implode and it doesn't do a reversal, part of me is like, I'm starting to get stronger in that perspective. There's something here. We are pushing toward a post-disclosure world. You know what I'm saying? So like when we finally get there, all the people that said, well, I got to see a dead body. I got it. Where's the evidence? The evidence was always there, just like Garry Nolan was saying. Look how the U.S. government is responding to this topic. Look how they've changed their position and their approach to this topic. Now couple that with the historical record that goes back 70 plus years, and all of the patterns that have emerged that are unmistakable. The shapes of the craft, the experiences people say they have that have had close encounters, and on it goes. Look, you think I'm gullible? In my opinion, you fell for propaganda. Going back to the Condon report and before, where the government didn't want to have this conversation. So they had campaigns to leave people off the trail. It is what it is. There was a lot of great material in that talk, and I'll leave a link to the full video in the description. But I think I'm going to leave it at that for the most part. Let's just go over one tweet before we go our separate ways, where Garry Nolan discusses a little bit about the event that he was involved in. Pew Pew 84 writes, 2 important questions for me. How many were in the audience and how many snickered when you said aliens of some kind were here? Mind you, I felt myself get uncomfortable when you said that in the beginning also. Garry P. Nolan responds, the room seemed full, perhaps 100 to 150. I was told that the conference by design expects at least 10 times that on video at the time, plus those who will watch. We did get great feedback. If I changed a few dozen minds or opened a few dozen more, mission served. Look, no one gets anywhere by being indecisive. Bold statements move discussions. And anyway, it's my opinion that was asked and I gave it. If people don't like that, well, critique away. That said, I also know exactly what I'm involved in related to this area, and I am as sure of how that will move the needle as any contribution I have made in my cancer immunology work over 3 decades. You can take that one to the bank. So I have a lot of ideas that I want to implement in the very near future with future videos. So do not forget to subscribe, because I think a lot of very good content is on its way. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You can become a patron. You can become a YouTube member. You can give me a one-time donation. All those possibilities can be accessed in the description box below. Or you can just slap a like on this bad boy, and I will appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.